First, thank you so much for your service, both in the uniform and with the badge. And uh, obviously, you're not averse to risk uh, for being a defender and protector, but also jumping into but the horse farm, which you had experience with, but that's going from law enforcement into that is it's kind of a switch. But then also
It is kind of a
deciding
switch.
to abandon all of that for something you didn't have a whole lot of experience in. You did have the with the triplex and the smaller units, but yeah, some people they start off small and they just get a little bit bigger. You went all the way in, and not only that, but you started a podcast, and not just a podcast, but a daily. That frankly takes balls. Uh, how did you? How were you able to accomplish this in a short amount of time?
Yeah. So, when we started the podcast, I don't think that I'd hardly ever spoken into a microphone before. And so really it didn't make any sense. And so I, I was traveling, I was meeting different people at conferences, and there were a couple people specifically who were very widely respected in our industry that I was talking to about the podcast and starting a daily podcast. Both of these individuals told me, Whitney, that's crazy. Don't do a daily podcast. And so I had a mentor, and now he's a great friend. But I went to him and I said, "Hey, these two people said that I was crazy if I did this." And he said, "This was his response. This fast." He said, "Well, that's why you have to do it, because it's too much work for most people." Like, okay. That I needed that kind of kick in the tail right at that moment, because it was a pivotal moment of me deciding, hey, is this crazy? Because everybody I talk to about podcasting, which most people do, if you're going to start a podcast, well, you talk to people who've done a podcast, right? And everybody said, oh, Whitney, it's so much work, or I can't get the show notes done, I can't find the guests, and all these things. And the thing they all had in common was they were all doing weekly shows. And I thought, man, maybe this is crazy, but you know what? It made me think differently, Aaron. It made me do things differently, because if I had done a weekly show from the beginning, I would have tried to have done those things. I would have tried to have done the show notes and the editing and the posting and the finding the guests, and thought, okay, I'll get it done. And I think that I would have gotten behind and probably quit on the podcasting. However, doing 7 times that many, I knew those things weren't even an option. I was still working full time as a federal agent as well. And so I had to build a team of virtual assistants from all over the world. I had 4 or 5 team members that were all VAs that did different parts of the show. And they knew that I was off work every other Monday from the federal position. And on those Mondays, they had to have 12 to 15 interviews scheduled for me back to back to back. And my wife would call it my marathon day. She would literally pack me lunch to go to the basement, which I hardly would get to eat, because they were literally back to back all day. But I just knew that's what I had to do to keep up, and I could barely keep up then. And so I didn't do any other parts of the show because I had to build a team to do that. And it really cost everything we had to do it. And then some. It's so expensive, to do a podcast anyway, much less a daily show. But you know what? Those times when I look back are sweet as well. When I think about those harder times, because I was traveling to conferences on the weekend, doing the podcast, still working full time. We were going through another adoption process. We had a failed placement, meaning we lost a lot of money and time through the adoption process. It was, we just sold our farm, but however, what, the Lord would just unite my wife and I every morning. We were up early, and we would have coffee and just pray together and talk about the week or the kids or read, whatever it may be. And it was just a sweet time for us as well, even though it was very difficult. We look back on that time now and we're very grateful for that. But it was a big risk, like you said. Everybody thought we were crazy. We probably had the nicest house of anybody in our family, and not probably one of the better jobs as well. And so it was very hard for everyone to understand, man, why are you all doing this? Even our church family, who really love us, were like, Whitney, is there is there something wrong? Like, why would you all do this? But we knew, hey, while it seems like a big risk, it's a bigger risk to not try, right? I can go back and become a police officer again. I can go back and probably get hired by the federal government again if I had to. But I'll never know if we could have made it or not doing this if I don't try, right? And yeah, I mean, I would have never known. And so, and now all these families that we've been able to partner with through the Omna Foundation, that wouldn't have happened. And who knows, what else, but all the connections through real estate and people we've been able to help, that wouldn't have happened. And so I'm very thankful we took the risk. And some would have said it was careless or crazy, right? A lot of people did, but I'm so thankful that we did, when we did.